Good morning, my listeners. This is Wiktor, Doktor, and this is 50th episode of Good Morning BSS World podcast. Today, with my guest, and my special guest is Mauricio Velasquez from Velasquez&Company from Colombia. Welcome, Mauricio.
Wiktor, thank you very much for this space to talk and gather as friends and give some hints and tips about outsourcing in this side of the world.
You are the first person, actually, who I talk from South America, from the whole LATAM region. So this is a big pleasure for me to have this talk and find out many more interesting tips and hints from this part of our perfect and beautiful globe. How is actually outsourcing now being run, considered? What's the shape of the industry in the South America?
Well, it's very interesting because it's been growing and it has evolved, if we can call it that way. We started at the beginning with services that were provided by the big corporations, like the IBMs of the world and the Oracles and the HP and so on and so forth. And with times, other companies have come and established operations here. And I will open it like on a phase approach. At the beginning, it was a bunch of ITO, information technology outsourcing, from either financial institutions or, corporations that would require services on a local basis being provided by these companies. And at some point in time, companies and countries, and I'm going to start including countries here, discovered that it was interesting to promote and to have other type of services. And which probably sometimes when you talked about it, Wiktor, and it's what I've seen throughout the world, everyone relates outsourcing with contact centers, which is a portion of it, but it's not the whole bunch of it. So that's why I make this emphasis on it. So we started with ITO. Then we move forward to more, I would say, customer experience type of services. And now on knowledge process outsourcing or more boutique type of services are moving forward. So that's basically kind of a situation of where we stand now, or what is going on in Latin America. And I mean, covering from Mexico from Mexico down to Argentina.
It seems to me, actually, that the LATAM region and South America is a natural near-shoring destination for the US or Canada-based clients. And you mentioned already Mexico or Argentina, but I guess that this is Costa Rica region, Jamaica, but also such countries like you are now located in Colombia,
right,
are the natural outsourcing partners for the North America.
And let's remember something, and I will go backwards a little bit. Historically, LATAM has been touched or quote unquote conquered by several nations. So as you said, we have Portuguese, which is Brazil. We have Spanish, which is most of the LATAM platform being conquered or discovered by. But on the other hand, you have the Caribbean. And on the Caribbean, you have English, you have Dutch, you have French, and you have languages that can add value to what you just said, which is being part of this new world in terms of services being provided either to Canada and the States up north, but on the other hand, Wiktor, which is something that just gave us kind of a starting point at some point in time, like 15 years ago or so, we touch Spain. So we serve the Spain from here. And there are situations on which we are serving some other countries on more specific type of services, which is the case probably of Argentina, and which is probably the case of Brazil, right? So I gave you just kind of a broad overview of what's going on based on a historical situation of languages acquired, plus economical movements that I still do have relationship with what we have right now in terms of economical stuff.
This is very, very interesting because the English, let's say, construction of the outsourcing services is rather moving more east. Yeah, so there is outsourcing in either Africa or in Europe or in Asia, especially in India or in Philippines. But when it comes to the outsourcing with the Spanish language, now it looks it goes to the west. So from Europe goes to the South America. Very, very interesting, let's say, geography of services.
And if you add something, and let me complement to what you're saying, which I fully agree with, is in this, let's say, moving world, we started doing basic jobs or basic tasks several years ago, right? But now more elaborated type of things are moving forward. And now you have companies here in LATAM which have investigation centers or development centers, or if we can call it software houses. And those software houses and those things are providing services to customers worldwide of companies that are probably established in Great Britain or in the, States or in France. So you have a bunch of different, it's kind of a melting pot, kind of a melting pot in terms of services, and kind of a melting pot in terms of cultures that have appeared and that have something in common, from Mexico again to Argentina, and not leaving out the famous Caribbean, which is at least some other interesting portion, which is moving forward and is moving very fast in terms of people providing services with some commonality, which is probably countries that were their conquerors and now are getting back to get services from them.
Okay, we spoke a little bit about the countries and some kind of services, but can we now move a little bit to the numbers? Can we somehow estimate how big is the outsourcing industry as such in the LATAM region, or what is the shape of the percentages of each services? So I already know that you started with IT, then customer experience, moving to KPO, and so on and so on. But are there any numbers which can show us which is now bigger than the other?
In terms of what we have right now, I would say that Mexico is leading the pace, right? They have been for this specific type of times and services, the leading one. If you go and consider there in Mexico, you have, I would say, the three flavors of the outsourcing arena. You have ITO, you have BPO, and you do have a lot of KPO, if we can call it that way, or more elaborated type of services, right? So based on that, I would say that the composition and I would say generally in LATAM, it's moving very hard in terms of volume. And when you consider volume, you have the contact center side, right? Which is a bunch of people sitting doing work for it.
Yeah.
And then probably you have a mixture between technology, and in technology, you can consider software development, software maintenance, all these things that are around the outsourcing of technology. And when you go to knowledge process, Wiktor, is ramping up. And it's ramping up, and it's probably not that percentage high that we can probably have, but I would say that it will become more wide used. So just to bring kind of an overview of, and I would say throughout LATAM, Argentina goes in second, right? And I would say that goes in second because it has been for many years having a long-standing position in terms of technology and in terms of people trained and educated on engineering, and it's going very fast. Brazil, probably you will ask him, Mauricio, why haven't you considered Brazil? Because Brazil is big enough. Brazil is the biggest country in LATAM. But Brazil itself works for itself. I hope that you understand what I mean. It's they have such a big market that most of the companies that do work there stay there, and they have kind of produce what they can serve.
Yeah, sometimes the size of a country doesn't show the size of a certain industry which is present in that country.
Correct. However, when you go inside, they do have a lot of interesting things that can either be exported or shared. And there are some companies, Brazilian companies, that are starting to conquer LATAM. And if you go, then the next one that I would consider either can be Colombia or Costa Rica. And why Colombia or Costa Rica? Because I would say if we would go in terms of inhabitants, obviously Colombia is much bigger than Costa Rica in terms of inhabitants. But Costa Rica has a very solid position in terms of services provided. They're very, very, very solid in terms of shared service centers or captive centers or global service centers. And in terms of technology. And if you go to Colombia, Colombia has been evolving and it's been, taking a fast pace in getting into the place that we should go forward, right? And historically, we started the same way. We started with information technology outsourcing, then we moved to BPO, like 12, 15 years ago. The government and the industry determined to push forward the industry. And now it's a very solid industry. And then you have, like the newcomers and like this type of entrepreneurship companies, that are moving forward into the knowledge process outsourcing and into services. And then the rest can go there, right? You have one which is very interesting in the southern portion of LATAM, which is Uruguay. And in Uruguay, you have companies that have established there. Uruguay can be compared to Costa Rica in terms of the size of the country and the number of inhabitants. And they made a good bet on what they have, and they're moving forward and they're moving fast. So that's, I would say, basically what we have. So if we can go in terms of a portion or a percentage, I would say that I either can be 50, 40, and 10. 50 in terms of information technology outsourcing, 40 in terms of business process outsourcing, and 10% and growing, and probably getting into the numbers of BPO, the knowledge process outsourcing. Because at the end, it's a derivation or a portion of BPO which is being more elaborated. I think I answer your question and what we're talking, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. It gives a clear picture of this, and I'm sure that if we would now focus on every country, then probably our talk would last for 2 days, not a couple of minutes, which we still have in front of us. So what I would like to do, you are based in Colombia. Your company is also based in Colombia. So let's maybe focus a little bit more on that destination, that country. From the perspective of business locations in Colombia, what are the main cities where this BPO, ITO, or KPO industry is now located? Can you give us a view of where this business is set up in your country?
Perfect. Victor, Colombia is a country of regions. And when I say a country of regions, is we have big cities on which industry have been developing, right? Obviously, as most of the countries throughout the world, the capital is the capital, right? The capital of the city is the capital of the city where everything moves and everything goes. So let me start with Bogota. Bogota, it's a very interesting city. We're close to 7 million inhabitants. And basically and historically, most of the companies that have been doing work for this sector, for this specific sector, have established operations there, right? So you have the multinationals that I mentioned before, the IBMs, the Hewlett Packards, and so on and so forth. And you have the on the BPO services, you have, you know, the Teleperformances of the world and Sykes and all these ones, right? Concentrix, Alorica as well. So they have established there, and they kind of start putting a feet on the ground there. And once they know that that this is going, they move to other cities, and there are some other cities that appear here. The second one, or not the second one, another very important one is Medellin, right? On which Medellin, you can find software development companies, very interesting ones on the ITO side. But at the same time, you have contact center companies that have widened their operation and moved there to have sites to operate, either for LATAM customers, or as I mentioned before, Spaniard customers or US customers. And then this thing exploded. I would say exploded in a good sense. And then the other cities started moving. And you have cities like, you know, if we can call it tier two or tier three cities on which operations moved. So you have Manizales, you have Pereira, which are located on the coffee growers zone. Very nice cities with very, very interesting people, talented people, young people. And you move a little bit up north, and you have Barranquilla on the coast side, which as well, they started doing very interesting work for BPO and very oriented at one point in time for bilingual services. So again, when you have a country with such a wide footprint, you can move into different cities with possibilities of having good resources and being and can grow. You can grow, right? And that's basically where we stand now, Victor. So in a brief summary, big cities like the capital, tier two cities like Medellin, Cali, Barranquilla, and then you can move to kind of what I would say, on my personal opinion, tier three cities, Manizales, Pereira, Armenia, Bucaramanga, which are probably moving forward. However, right now it's a very interesting tendency, which is to work on smaller cities that no one has gone there. And you can start working on what you and I know, which is impact sourcing projects that you can stand or stay there, establish an operation, and give opportunities to people that probably haven't been seen by no one, and that can get an interesting position into this interesting industry.
I guess that this is some kind of a trend which started to grow or more develop during the pandemic times, that this regionalization and focus on the smaller cities, which were not recognized earlier on, has now increased. So yes, I do agree, because this is a similar approach what we have in Europe, that usually in each country the capital is the main location for the outsourcing providers, or the location for the SSCs or the captive centers. But then all moves into the smaller cities and smaller towns. So it looks like that the trend is the same, but you mentioned so many cities that it shows a lot of opportunities actually to grow and scale the business in Colombia.
Yeah, that's right. And let me add something to what you're saying. Besides, let's say, going out of the big cities are probably given the opportunity of others because of this COVID situation and this, you know, let's call it digital adaptation. I won't say transformation, to have connections and to have access to internet. So if you are connected and if you have good access to internet, you can connect to whoever you want and whatever form you are, independently of, well, for example, you and I right now. I'm in Cali right now, and you're in Warsaw. So the world is getting us the opportunity to be closer to a lot of people, a lot of companies, and a lot of opportunities. So that is correct. And by the way, Victor, this situation works on some other countries as well, which is, for example, the case of Argentina, which is, for example, the case of Brazil. But again, I would say something that probably is going to be interesting, which is size matters. And when I mean size matters is if you have a country with 50 million inhabitants, well, the opportunity that you have of widespread in this type of works, which is probably what is not working, is probably the challenges that small countries have, right? Like in Central America and like in the Caribbean. But at the end, they're going to have probably not 10, 15 cities. They can have 2 or 3 cities, which are going to do the same way that you and I talked.
Yeah. Maybe let's now move to human capital, okay? Because we already know the logistics of the country, and we know the tier 1, tier 2, and the others locations, the connectivity, the internet access, perfect, fully understandable approach, because now the connectivity is the must to provide BPO right. or SSC services. But the outsourcing and shared services grow where people are. Yeah. So we know already what you mentioned, that you've got 7 million people living in Bogota.
Yeah.
That's the number of people who do live there. But what is the overall availability of human resources who might be working for the outsourcing industry? So those who, for example, are graduates of the universities who you have in Colombia. Do you have such numbers?
I don't have the numbers right now, but I can give you some ideas of how it behaves and how it works. Bogota, I would say, has a lot of interesting universities and technical centers where people can go and study. Just to give you some numbers, the industry as a whole, it has approximately, when I mean as a whole, is Colombia itself is approximately 650,000 employees on the BPO services.
650,000 employees in BPOs in Colombia.
Yes.
And it's double size than this what we have in Poland.
Yeah. And of those, the important portion here, Victor, is that most of those, I would say most of those, let's say that in a percentage, I would say that approximately 40 to 50% are located in Bogota area, right? So most of those persons are concentrated in Bogota. So the remaining ones, if we can split those things in half, 300,000 can be probably in the remaining cities, right? So having said that, Bogota is becoming very interesting because you have nice and great universities and technical centers. And at the same time, you have outsourcer players, but you have insourcers. So you have captive centers that are moving interestingly towards this type of services. You can find universities with very good engineering studies, and you have financial, you have operations. So at the end, everything works together with this ecosystem that we have built. And when I mean we is, the private sector, the public sector, and the clients and consultants like me. So when we put everything together, the thing moves very interesting. But the same situation goes into the other cities, obviously with no such big pool of resources. But at the same time, you split those things into the other cities, which is probably what I explained you, the tier 1, the tier 2, and the tier 3. For example, you can go to tier 3 cities, which are 500,000 inhabitants, and you can have 5,000, right, employees working on the industry, split it across, right, across what I said, ITO, BPO, and knowledge process outsourcing. So that gives you kind of an idea of what we have in terms of numbers and what we can do.
I am shocked. Really, I wasn't aware that there are 650,000 people working in BPOs in Colombia.
Yeah, in outsourcing in general, in outsourcing in general.
I do understand. This is including IT, customer experience, BPOs, captives, and so on and so on. Anyway, this is an absolutely huge number. So it only gives us a certain view how big the size of full outsourcing is in the whole LATAM region. If only in Colombia you've got 650,000 people, so I can imagine easily there are millions who are working in outsourcing industry in the South America.
And the other important thing, Victor, it's that is growing because LATAM has understood that is an important portion and that is an interesting industry. And the other beauty of it is that COVID, instead of taking us out of the market, helped us get into the market, right? Which is what we're seeing right now with the US companies looking for services on the same platform, which at the end, it's something that is helping them. To give you an idea, to fly from Dallas, Fort Worth to Bogota, it's a 5-hour flight.
Yeah.
To fly from Miami to Bogota or to Cali, it's a 3-hour flight, right? So it's opening our scope, but at the same time, it's allowing us to connect with supply and demand. Which and I would say that for most of the countries in LATAM, it's working the same way.
Okay.
It's working the same way.
So as I understand it well, it means that the American clients or business partners are becoming more and more open for cooperating with the LATAM region.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And what I've seen and what I heard from people that I'm doing businesses with, Victor, right now, it's sometimes it's hard to take a flight and go 14 hours from any major US airport to the Pacific, any major airport on the Pacific side. So it's easier. And it's a challenge that we're facing, taking into consideration that, for example, the Philippines and India have a bunch of resources more than what we have, right? But here is something that is expanding and something that is moving.
Yeah, of course, there are always some pros and cons when you compare nearshoring to offshoring. Yeah, maybe with offshoring you have a little bit cheaper service, but longer distance. In here, you may be in the same or very similar even time zone. So this is also helpful when it comes to the service delivery to the final client who is based in the same time space.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, Mauricio, a few things for the end of our call. You are working as an industry consultant. Yeah, your company is supporting other businesses when it comes to outsourcing area. What exactly do you do in your business?
Well, thank you for allowing me to share with the audience what I do. First of all, I work on the strategy of companies that would love to get into the outsourcing the right way, right? So I sat with the executives and I help them build the right approach to hire or to develop that outsourcing strategy. Once we have that, I go and work with them alone to go into the terms and conditions that will build what they need to, right? And on the other hand, that's from the customer standpoint. And from the provider standpoint of view is I help them to establish in countries like Colombia with the knowledge that I have and the years of experience that I have. So I go and find cities or places where they can have resources allocated, very good resources. And I've been doing that thing for the last 10 years right now, Victor. And there's a third one, which I do love a lot, which is my personal motivation for doing this. I am helping other people to have the opportunities that I have had. That's I would say, my main purpose. And why I say this, because lately I'm working on impact sourcing projects, because we mentioned it a little bit, but I want to emphasize on something is, for LATAM, impact sourcing should be something to consider, because for a person in Latin America with no access or little access to work and opportunities, this can be a very interesting option. And that's why probably the industry in terms of volumes has been growing, because right now it's a very interesting challenge due to, what we have passed, or we still are moving, which is COVID. So unemployment, youth unemployment is growing, and we have to help them. And that's basically what I do, Victor. That's what Velasquez&Company does.
It sounds to me that you act like a one-stop shop, because from one hand you can support somebody who has no idea how to move into outsourcing model, and from the other side you can show where and what is possible and how can be done. Yeah,
and basically why I do that thing, Victor, because that's what I've been doing for all my experience years, right? I've been on companies like the ones that I mentioned you before, big names from which I learned a lot. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm applying right now, right? Either being on the customer side, either being on the provider side, and either being as an employee which I was for many years on these companies.
But that's how it usually happens with us consultants, yeah? That we usually started with the big brands doing something for bigger guys, and then growing our experience, we can do something on our own with our new business philosophy.
That's right. Which, by the way, we work much more than when we were employed.
Yeah.
I spend most, tons of hours working, but I know it's something that goes inside of us, which is passion,
Yeah, that's how it works. Mauricio, you mentioned twice about the impact sourcing. I guess that this is a great topic to cover in our perhaps other meeting, because today we are out of time already, because this is a huge area to be discussed and might be touched from different angles. But the last but not least, I usually know that after the talks with my guests, people would like to know where to find them or how to find them. So if somebody would like to find Mauricio Velásquez, what such person should do?
It's very easy. My email is Mauricio, Mauricio, @Velásquez.co. Velasquez.co. And you can find me on LinkedIn. Very easy to find. And I'm available and ready to help and to bring solid opportunities for everyone in Latin America.
I will make sure to leave the proper links into the description of today's show, so people will have it easy to find you. But for the moment, Mauricio, it was a great chat. I must say I learned a lot about the outsourcing industry, especially in Colombia. 650,000 people working in the industry. That's the number which I will remember for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for today.
Victor, thank you for your time. And again, available when you want to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So here it is. That was the story directly coming from Colombia, from South America. Mauricio Velásquez, this is the name you should remember, as this is the guy who knows nearly everything about outsourcing in the LATAM region. It was a great talk for me. I learned a lot. And I guess I have a feeling this was not the last meeting with Mauricio on the Good Morning BSS World podcast waves which you can get in here. If you like today's show, why not to buy me a coffee on the Buy Me a Coffee service? You are very welcome to do so, and I am sure I will deliver you much more valuable content in the next episode of Good Morning BSS World podcast. Talk to you soon.